Welcome to our guide on the so-called soft landing with a new green card. In this video, we will explain what a soft landing is, how your status is activated on first entry, the 1-year I-551 stamp, the critical 180-day absence rule, how address logistics work for your physical card, why intent matters, how to plan a safe soft landing, and when to consider a re-entry permit. We will also include quizzes to reinforce your understanding, and we will finish with key do's and don'ts as well as a summary. Before we begin, please note that this content is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Immigration situations can be highly fact-specific. You should consult a qualified immigration attorney to obtain advice tailored to your circumstances. Here is today's agenda. First, we will define what a soft landing is. Next, we will explain activation of status and the I-551 stamp. Then, we will cover the critical 180-day rule. After that, we will discuss address logistics for your physical green card. We will then focus on intent and what officers look for. We will walk through a step-by-step soft landing plan, followed by re-entry permit essentials. Finally, we will share key do's and don'ts and ask a couple of quiz questions along the way. A soft landing is when a new immigrant, after receiving an immigrant visa, makes a short initial entry into the United States to activate lawful permanent resident status, and then departs again to wrap up overseas commitments, such as selling property or leaving a job. While this is fairly common, it carries risks if you stay abroad too long or fail to establish ties showing your intent to reside in the United States. This timeline illustrates the typical sequence. First, your immigrant visa is approved abroad. Next, on your first entry to the United States, Customs and Border Protection endorses your immigrant visa with an I-551 stamp, which serves as temporary proof of permanent residence and is generally valid for 1 year. Then, the physical green card is produced and mailed to the U.S. address you provide. After that, many people depart abroad briefly to handle outstanding matters. However, the crucial step is to return within 180 days to avoid triggering abandonment concerns. Finally, the focus should be to establish U.S. ties, including housing, banking, employment, taxes, and utilities, to evidence your intent to make the United States your permanent home. Upon initial entry, a CBP officer typically endorses the immigrant visa in your passport with an I-551 annotation. This stamp functions as temporary proof of your permanent resident status, usually for 1 year. It is acceptable for airline boarding and for re-entry to the United States, and can be used for employment verification using the I-9 process, alongside your passport. Meanwhile, the physical green card will be mailed to the U.S. address you provided. Remember that your residency clock officially starts on that first entry, regardless of how short the visit is. The most important timing rule is to keep any immediate post-activation absence under 180 days. Generally, absences under 6 months do not cause issues. However, once your time abroad approaches or exceeds 6 months, officers may question whether your real residence is outside the United States. If your absence approaches a year without a re-entry permit, the government may presume abandonment of your permanent residence, which has serious consequences. Therefore, a conservative approach is to plan your initial wrap-up period to be 4 months or less, then return to the United States to maintain continuity of residence. This table summarizes typical outcomes by absence length. Under 180 days, re-entry is usually smooth, provided documents are valid. From 180 to 364 days, expect more scrutiny regarding the location of your primary residence and your intent. Around 1 year without a re-entry permit, abandonment may be presumed, which can lead to serious problems. With an approved re-entry permit, you can generally remain abroad for longer, but officers may still evaluate your intent and overall ties to the United States. Quiz time. The question is, what is the safest maximum absence immediately after activating LPR status to avoid abandonment concerns? The options are A. 90 days, B. 179 days or less, C. 365 days, and D. unlimited, while the I-551 stamp is valid. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. 179 days or less. Remaining abroad under 6 months is the commonly accepted threshold to avoid abandonment concerns. and planning for less than 4 months provides an additional margin of safety. Beyond the calendar, intent is a key factor. Officers consider whether your real life is centered in the United States. If you maintain a full-time job, a primary home, and financial ties primarily overseas immediately after activation, this can raise red flags, even if you stayed abroad for less than 6 months. Conversely, building U.S. ties and transitioning your life here demonstrates your intent to permanently reside. On the left are examples of U.S. ties that support your intent: setting up housing, establishing banking and credit activity, obtaining employment or actively searching, setting up utilities and insurance, filing U.S. taxes when required, and enrolling family members in schools and healthcare. On the right are indicators that may undermine your case: maintaining your primary residence abroad, retaining full-time overseas employment, keeping all financial activity outside the United States, remaining abroad for extended periods after activation, lacking a U.S. address or bills, and delaying the shipment of your belongings for an indefinite period. Officers evaluate the overall picture of these ties. This flowchart outlines a simplified decision path during reentry. If your absence is under 180 days, officers will still assess your ties. If your U.S. ties are strong, reentry is typically smooth. If your ties appear weak, you could be sent to secondary inspection and questioned about your residence. If your absence is 180 days or more, expect intensive questioning. And if you are near or over 1 year without a reentry permit, abandonment of status may be presumed. A reentry permit can reduce, but not eliminate, scrutiny. Here is a practical plan for the first 30 to 120 days. First, enter the United States, confirm your I-551 stamp, and provide a secure mailing address to CBP. Next, obtain a Social Security number if needed. Open a U.S. bank account, and start your credit history. Then, secure housing and set up utilities, phone service, and health insurance. Begin employment if possible, or document your active job search. Keep evidence of your ties, such as leases, bills, job offers, and bank statements. Plan to return within 4 months to minimize risk. If you must remain abroad longer, consult a qualified attorney about filing for a reentry permit. Finally, when you re-enter, carry documentation of your U.S. ties, and be prepared to explain your wrap-up timeline concisely. Regarding address logistics, you may provide or update your U.S. mailing address for the physical green card when you enter. The address does not have to be in the same city or state as your port of entry. The key is that it must be secure and reliable for receiving official documents. Provide the correct address to the CBP officer during inspection. If you later move, permanent residents are generally required to report a change of address to USCIS, typically by filing an AR-11 online within the required timeframe. Maintain reliable access to your mail, and consider tracking or forwarding as appropriate. Here is the next quiz. The question is: if you keep your full-time job and primary home overseas but return to the United States within 5 months, are you automatically safe from intent questions? The options are: A. Yes, under 6 months means no issues. B. No, strong overseas ties can still trigger scrutiny. C. Yes, because the I-551 stamp guarantees reentry. And D. It depends only on the state where you first entered. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section. The correct answer is B. Even if you return within 5 months, maintaining strong overseas ties, such as a full-time job and a primary residence abroad, can still trigger questions about your intent to live permanently in the United States. A reentry permit helps permanent residents who need to remain abroad for extended periods. You must file the application while physically in the United States, and the biometrics appointment occurs in the United States. The permit is typically valid for up to 2 years. However, it is not a guarantee of admission. Officers may still evaluate your intent and ties. Apply early if you anticipate long trips, and continue strengthening your U.S. ties. For complex schedules, consult an immigration attorney. Here's a quick checklist in markdown form. Provide a secure United States mailing address to CBP. Keep your absence under 180 days, and ideally under 120 days. Build ties such as housing, banking, employment, and utilities. Save documentary proof of these ties for re-entry. Consider a re-entry permit if extended travel is unavoidable. Remember that the combination of your intent and your timeline determines how smooth your re-entry may be. These are the main do's and don'ts. Do return within approximately 4 months if possible. Do establish and document U.S. ties. Do provide a secure address for mail. Do not assume the I-551 stamp by itself guarantees admission. Do not keep your entire life overseas after activation. Do consider a re-entry permit if long absences are unavoidable. Do not miss change of address obligations. To summarize, your first entry activates permanent resident status, and the I-551 stamp serves as temporary proof. Keep any immediate post-activation absence under 180 days, and ideally under 120. Intent is crucial. Build U.S. ties as early as possible and keep records. Provide a secure mailing address at entry, and update USCIS if you move. If you must remain abroad for an extended period, consider a re-entry permit, and consult qualified counsel as needed. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more immigration insights. Let us know your soft landing plan and any questions in the comments.